We'll see what happens. I have no idea. And I think we'll go ahead and start the meeting. And as I see people pop up in the attendee list that are part of our panel, I may go ahead and mention that. But just a couple of things, sort of housekeeping. We basically, the format is that we're going to hear from our various candidates and those representing the various measures for 5 minutes apiece. And then there will be a total of 10 minutes for questions from the membership audience. You don't have to be a CPO1 member to ask questions tonight. We're opening it up for everybody. But the preferred method for asking a question is to type something into the chat screen, but you don't have to. If you prefer to just raise your hand, that's fine too. And our helpers from the Community Engagement Office are going to help me keep track of that. So feel free to ask a question when you can ask your question anytime, but we'll call on people after the candidates or those representing the measures have gone ahead and presented their information. Now, I have a few updates to share with everybody. And I will, there's some links to share, and I will type those links into the chat box now. Okay, so on October 26th, there's going to be a neighborhood meeting for the proposed Target store that's going into the space where Bale's Thriftway used to be. We've been discussing that on Nextdoor and Facebook, but if you're not on either one of those groups, it may be big news to you. It's going to be a small format Target, and they want to have a neighborhood meeting to hear from the neighbors. What have I got to do to make that happen? Okay, I don't see it. But anyway, did you see the link I just posted? I don't know. It's not showing up.
I do not see it, Virginia. Make sure on the chat you type or you click all panelists and attendees so everybody can see it when it does go on there, but I don't see it at this point.
Okay, well, anyway, they're going to have a neighborhood meeting on October 26th. It will be, I'm going to publish an update to the Cedar Mill News because we've had some fairly important things just drop on us that we didn't get before publication. So if you're a subscriber to Cedar Mill News, you will get that information and you'll be able to click on the links. I'll also post it on the Cedar Mill News and the CPO1 Facebook pages. If you don't want to participate in either of those things, just send me an email at cpo1leaders@gmail.com and I'll send you the information. I don't know why this isn't coming through. To that Thrifty, what? No, it's the old Bale's Thriftway at the corner of Cornell and Salzman. And there's also going to be an open house, online open house for the Filbert Street sidewalk. That's been in the works for several years, and it's finally bubbling to the top of the it's not minor betterments anymore, but to the top of the county's list for construction. The online open house is going to be, there's a page for it on the county website. I'm going to try again. There they are. They all popped up. What do you know? There's the link, so you guys can copy that if you're interested. Pardon me. And then the Saltzman Road project, the project to figure out what to do with the upper end of Saltzman Road. The date for the meeting has changed to October 22nd. And I did update that in the article in the news. And here is the link. So that takes care of my news. Were there any questions about any of that? Good. Okay, let's go ahead and hear from the sheriffs.
Well, good evening. I'm Brenda Schaefer. I'm a new face to a lot of folks. I'll keep it real quick because we got a great agenda tonight. But Brenda Schaefer, I am the new Community Outreach and Education Specialist for the Bethany area. And I'm really glad to be on here. In fact, I am going to tap over here just to get you a few of my stats so you can see them there if you want to be in touch. Starting up the Facebook page, so you won't see many people on there yet. What we're noticing in the Bethany area is an unfortunate trend lately to do with car prowling and package thefts and that kind of really annoying neighborhood stuff. What we are most asking of people is don't leave important things in your cars. They seem to be targeted. Important things include your garage door opener, because some folks, when they're able to, will access a house that way. But they're mostly after finding unlocked doors. So be vigilant about locking up in the evenings, the shed, the car, the house. We are aware of these things happening. We're scanning, we're watching, we have plans in place, and we're working on it. We need, when things happen, you guys make sure you report. And we actually even have an online reporting. If you go to the sheriff's office webpage, it can make it really easy for you. If in the morning you notice it looks like somebody's messing around on a lock trying to get in, or you look at your surveillance video of your front yard and you see somebody who's trying the door of your car, even if they didn't get in, we'd love to hear from you on that. We want those incidences reported so that we can better target where we need to be to make this all stop. And that's just what I want to share with you tonight. That's the biggest issue we're dealing with right now. And I will say Deputy Woods is a participant on here tonight. So if in the chat box, if you have any more specific sorts of detailed type questions, he is available. He can help us answer some questions tonight. But with that, I will pass it back. And I'm looking forward to all that we're covering tonight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Let's hear from the Park District.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Yorstone. I am the center supervisor at both the tennis center and the athletic center at the main HMT complex. There's 43 people here, and I know that everybody came to listen to my spiel today, so I'll take up most of the time. Just kidding. Facility openings, as everybody is aware, Conestoga Athletic Center and the Tennis Center have been opened up for about a month now. Cedar Hills has opened up. Their weight and fitness rooms are now available 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. So if anybody wants to go work out at Cedar Hills, you will have to make a reservation, but we would love to have you. And then lastly on that, last week, we opened up the 50-meter pool at the HMT complex, along with the pool at the Conestoga Rec Center down in South Beaverton. So, and we are offering lap swim and also water fitness. So if you want to partake in either of those, we would love to have you. Free fitness in the park this month. All fitness levels are welcome, and no pre-registration is required. Please go to the THPRD website, to get places and times, but we would love to have you out at our parks, safe outside, and exercising. Our out-of-school program continues. THPRD is offering out-of-school care at both Cedar Hills and Conestoga. Each pods of kids are in, a group of 10 They stay within the pod by grade level, and spots are limited, but they are still available. Preschool programs THPRD is offering preschool programs at both Cedar Hills Nature Center and Conestoga. Spaces are limited, but please go to the website if that is something that interests you and your family. Two more items. Halloween, we're hosting a social distancing drive-through Halloween at the HMT complex. That'll be on October 24th at 6 p.m. And then lastly, we are hosting an online fair this month and have lots of resource information for a virtual health and wellness resource fair. And once again, all that information is on our website. So if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer. If not, I'll pass back to Virginia.
One quick note that I'd like to make is that the county gives out a citizen involvement award every year called the Harold Haynes Citizen Involvement Award. And this year, the Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District Visioning Task Force, consisting of about 13 people, won the Citizen Involvement Award for their work on creating the Vision Action Plan. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we connected with over 1,000 people to get the ideas of what's going to move THPRD forward in future years. So thank you very much, Bruce.
Great. Yeah, Brian, we have a question from Stan Hausman asking if the Garden Home Recreation Center, when will that be open?
We are still working on that. We're looking at probably sometime next year for that to open up. It is open for our contracted folks. I believe there's a library that's out of there that is open, along with I believe there's also a contracted preschool that is now open, but we are hoping to open it the first part of next year.
Great. Okay. Well, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. We don't, I don't believe we have anybody from fire or the school district. And I would think if we, if our panelists are ready, we ought to just go ahead. Lisa, are you ready to go ahead and give your presentation?
I'm ready, Virginia. If you want to go ahead, we can go ahead and do that right now. I've got lots of information, so if anybody's got questions, we can just get started. And if nothing else, we'll have time for questions, or we'll get to some extra time for everybody else. So my name is Lisa Dupre. I'm one of the public affairs and communications coordinators with the county's public information office out of the administrative office. And Virginia was kind enough to ask if I could come on and just get the word out as we want to about where things stand. As starting tomorrow, the ballots start getting mailed out. And tonight is the deadline for registering to vote. If you're not registered, you can do it right up until midnight tonight at oregonvotes.gov. And that takes you directly, that's the shortened URL to the Secretary of State's office. And that's where you can go and register tonight online. You can do it right up till 11:59 p.m. You can register. And then starting tomorrow, the ballots start going out. And we have 21 drop sites in the county. I know there was a lot of concern after what happened in May, because if you're not familiar with the timing of everything, and of course we were all going into the quarantine scenario, and a lot of us, we all thought, oh, well, this will be a couple weeks, it won't be a big deal, we'll be all back to normal. But what ended up happening is you have to state, the elections offices have to state where their drop sites are 30 days ahead of the election. So it's early April, and they thought everything was going to operate as normal with the libraries. And everybody believed they would be able to be open. We all thought we were going to be out of these restrictions and everything. Well, what ended up happening was a lot of you in the Beaverton area experienced, a lot of these libraries were closed. Along came the May primary, and it was down to the day of the election. The elections team was going, let's throw up a tent, put a ballot box out there, but still it created a lot of confusion and traffic congestion and everything, trying to figure out what to do. So they began working from May onward to figure out how to resolve this by November. And what has happened is we have 4 sites where there is now a 24-hour access box. It's outside, and the bulk of those are in the Beaverton area. Happy to let you know that the Cedar Mill Community Library today, we got that box, was in place, opened. It had some of the slowest drying cement. The guys at facilities said, this is just not happening as quick as we wanted it to there, but they got the box in. They sent us pictures today. So Cedar Mill Community Library now has a 24-hour access drive-up box, as does, and pardon me for looking away at the camera here, I'm looking at my list. The Beaverton Library one, they're a little concerned about us, how we describe this for everybody. If you think where the big Beaverton Library is, they're on 5th. It now has an outdoor box, but it's on Hall Boulevard. It sits between 3rd and 5th on Hall across the street. So you'll be able to drive up on Hall, and on the driver's side, there's a box there now for the Beaverton Library. There's also West Slope Community Library now has an outdoor access box. If you're familiar with Washington County Service Center East, its box has been moved. It's been moved a little more north to hopefully ease some of that traffic congestion that happens with that particular box there. West Slope Community Library now has an outdoor 24-hour access box. Of the libraries where it just could not work due to their parking lot or whatever, where they couldn't get a box outside, Washington County Cooperative Library Services, they have been amazing. Their crew has come forward and said, look, we still want ballot boxes that the library staff can help with. So what it's going to be with 5 of the libraries, it's Aloha Community Library. That's the one at Farmington Marketplace there in the shopping center. The Garden Home Community Library, Bethany, and the Beaverton Library, Murray Shoals. And then if you're in Hillsborough, it's the public library at Shoup Park. Those will have ballot boxes. They will either be at under a canopy right outside the door, or if the library staff felt they could look at their library lobby and make it work with the physical distancing, it'll be inside the lobby. But there will be boxes at those libraries. It'll just be a case of where you'll have to get out of the vehicle and walk up to the box. We have also a brand new box this will make its debut, first time ever in Hillsborough at Westside Commons, formerly known as the Fair Complex. It's got a drive up 24-hour access box. They're hoping it's going to relieve some of the congestion that happens at the busiest box in the county, and the busiest box in Washington County for getting activity and getting all those ballots is the one at the Hillsborough Main Library on Brookwood Parkway. And they're hoping with the one now at Westside Commons that they can relieve some of the congestion there. Our main message we're telling everybody, because there is the concern over getting everything, if you're mailing it, that the ballot's going to get there on time. And so we're telling everybody, whatever box you choose, just choose it early and vote early. Whether you're going to mail it, whether you're going to use a ballot box at a drop site, just do it early. If you vote early by mail, it's going to increase your chance of getting that ballot to the election office on time. The Postal Service is saying October 27th is the last day to mail. We're advising a 24-hour, or not a 24-hour, a window of from October 24th through the 27th. Don't even take it right to the 27th. Aim for October 24th through the 27th. The advantage of voting early, if you're going to use a ballot drop site, is the fact that if you don't wait until that last minute there, Monday afternoon on November 2nd, or at any point on election day on the 3rd, you're going to help yourself avoid a long line of traffic that often develops throughout some of these ballot drop sites. So that's why our messaging is whatever box you choose, whether you do it early in the mailbox or whether you go to a drop site, just vote early and get it taken care of and check that off your list and get it done. And then that's going to increase your chances of just one less thing you have to worry about. Did I get it in the mail on time? Am I going to get caught on traffic on election night? That kind of thing. Information about voting. If you've got any questions on how to find this ballot drop site list, Washington County's elections office has a shortened URL. It's washcovotes.org, and that will take you right to the election website. So that is the way you can find a lot of the information and find those ballot drop sites. You can track your ballot by using My Vote, and you find My Vote on the Secretary of State's office website, they have a shortened URL for that as well. It's oregonvotes.gov. You go there and the page will open and you'll see a bunch of boxes right across the top and it'll say My Vote. Click on My Vote, it'll take you to the portal where you could go in and track your ballot. So that's something we're recommending as well as a way to keep track of your ballot. Is there anybody have any questions or anything?
Virginia, you're muted.
Virginia is still muted.
I'm muted.
There, she's not any longer.
Said you've answered people's questions before they even asked them. So that's great. Yeah, I was really happy to get your information to be able to share in the Cedar Mill News. I saw something on one of the talk shows saying, make sure you understand how things work in your state and your county. And it inspired me to ask you to get us something, and you did. I really appreciate that, because Oregon's a lot safer and has our act together a lot better than other parts of the country, but people are seeing this stuff and they think maybe it applies to us as well. So it's really great to be able to share the good news about, okay, somebody says washcovotes.org is not working.
Oh, it was working this afternoon. I don't know. Washco. It's Washco, WASHCO votes plural.org.
Yeah, somebody else said it's working. So
yeah. And I saw there were some questions about, and I was asking about this too, about if your signature doesn't match. And there's the way you can there's a couple of ways that can be remedied. You still have till midnight tonight if you're concerned about your signature matching. Actually, it's online. I don't think you could check it now tonight. But don't worry, if something happens that your signature is not matching, you will get a letter. You'll be contacted by the elections office. If they see an issue with the signature matching, you have 14 days after the election to resolve it. That's why when you hear sometimes about the election is not certified until weeks later, that's because they're resolving issues with ballots and things like that. So what happens, they have election staff that are trained in forensics to look at signatures. And if something comes up that it doesn't look like it matches, you are contacted by the elections office and you're given up to 14 days after the election to come in and do a new signature card, and then they verify it at that time. I think there's another form you can fill out and return to them, but the fastest way is to just go to the office and sign a new signature
which is
card.
another good reason to do it a little early.
Do it a little early, and it really helps resolve it at that point in time. But that's how they do it. Interesting statistics that Mickey Kawai, our elections manager, gave me the other day, because a lot of people think a lot of ballots, there's a lot of rejection and everything. And she went and looked at the last two presidential elections, 2012 and 2016. Signatures not matching in 2016, out of 276,061 votes cast in Washington County, only 1,266 had that issue. And she says it's an easy one to resolve. That's where they deal with that 14 days afterwards. They've got that point in time for you. You're notified. She said, usually before the end of the week, they like to, if the election's on the Tuesday, by Friday, the letter is going out to you to say your signature doesn't match. It's considered a challenge ballot. And then you have until 14 days after the election to get into the elections office and sign a new card, and then they verify it and you move forward.
Can we look that up in advance? Because I can never remember if I use my full name or just, Virginia.
You can look it up prior to the registration deadline.
Okay.
So the registering to vote, yeah, it's tonight. And I don't know that you can get on and see it. You can find out if you're registered, but to see if the signature has changed, you'd have to check with the elections office, and they can call it up and they have a copy of it there where they can see it on the screen.
Right. Okay.
So, but that's where we are. But we're really glad we could get all these ballot boxes figured out, and the elections team worked hard. And You know, you think it's going to be an easy process to move a box outside, but in some instances, libraries are located, for example, they may be located in a building that it's not government owned. So there is a landlord or a property manager that they have to get a hold of and say, hey, could we take up some parking spaces and put a ballot box in? And that doesn't always work. And so, and even if everything is approved and it works, they look at, is there good egress and egress out of the parking lot? They have to look and figure out, are we going to cause some traffic congestion on election day if we put a box there? So there was a lot of work that went into figuring out, and their goal was to see how many of those boxes they could get outside for 24-hour drive-up access. And they were able to do it with all but 5 of the libraries. So 4 of them gained it in 4 locations of drop sites gained it in Beaverton. We were able to get that box outside. And this part of what they look at too is how much security can they put around the box? Ideally, if you can get it located to where you know there's a security camera that's watching it, it's under a street light. They're very locked up and secured anyway, but if they can get them to where they've got a camera that can watch them, or there's always video footage of what's going on, and there's a street light, that's some of the concerns. So all these things are taken into account to figure out if they can find that ideal spot to put a ballot drop site at.
Excellent. Someone just asked if it's your driver's license signature, but I'm pretty sure it's, well, I don't know anymore.
Well, in Oregon, there is the system, Oregon DMV, that is what the systems that's used. So like if you're registering tonight, if you're waiting to do it online, the ID and everything that will be used is your DMV records. Now, the way you can do it obviously going to the elections office in person is how they can call up on the screen, and you don't need DMV records to register in person online at the elections office. Unfortunately, the elections office is closed right now, so they're not there. So at this point now tonight, it's for the folks who they have to register, who haven't been registered before. But it is your DMV record that is used if you're doing it online.
Somebody
That's how they do it.
asked how often the boxes are emptied.
They I don't know what their schedule is. I know they go and check them as we get closer to the election. The crew that goes out, I've never heard Mickey tell me the frequency with which they go by and check them. I know it's more frequent as we get closer to election day that they check them.
And then we had a question about checking to see what past elections you voted, but I think that's the OregonVotes.org.
I think My Vote gives a lot of statistics on there, your My Vote portal that you find on there, and that's how you track your ballot. That's where you'll be able to go on, and that's through the Secretary of State's office at OregonVotes.gov, and you'll see that right on top, My Vote. You can go in, and that's how you can check and see what your voter registration and everything looks like. Of course, you can still do that right now. Do that tonight. You could go on and look at it. And that's also how you can track your ballot. Once you voted, it will track the ballot for you on My Vote. So, but again, vote early, whether you choose to mail it or whether you choose to use a ballot drop site box. We're just encouraging everybody not to push it to that limit this year. Make sure you get it in one of those boxes, the mailbox or a ballot box at a drop site, as early as you possibly can.
Well, and we hope that with all the local information we're giving people tonight, that they'll be able to make up their minds and vote early. And don't participate in the undervote. That's when you don't vote on the local issues. And that's one of the main reasons we're having our forum tonight, so that everybody's informed about not just the big national and state races and measures and stuff, but that you can be informed about the local stuff, which is actually very likely to have more of an influence on your life than all that national stuff. So I think we're good. I don't see election observers someone's asking about. Do you have enough volunteers to be election observers?
Mickey, they would know at the elections office. That's one thing I have not been updated on. I know Mickey Kawai, our manager, said, this was a few weeks back, she says, I suspect we will be approached by many to be elections observers this year from the different parties and that kind of thing. And that would be, you know, where you find out about that is by contacting our elections office, and their number, I made sure I wrote it down here tonight, 503-846-5800. And that's, you can call and talk to Mickey Kawai. And
Keep that again.
it is 503-846-5800. And
Great.
again, remember, you can get to our elections page quickly by just typing in the URL washcovotes.org, and it will take you directly to our homepage where there's plenty of information about the election on that.
And to you visitors, we've put all that stuff into the chat box. You just have to scroll up. You can only see the latest things, but if you're interested in all those URLs that check all your information, just keep scrolling up in the chat box. And Pam Treese shared some interesting information that I didn't realize, which is that the signature is the same as how your ballot is addressed to you in the mail. So whatever name is on the address of your ballot, that's how you need to sign your ballot. That's clear. Thank you, Pam. That's helpful. I'm always in a quandary every year or two. Which signature should I use? But that's really clear and helpful. Okay, well, I think we're good and we're sticking with our schedule. So if the candidates for the Oregon House are ready, we'll go ahead and start that. And Vicki is an intern for the news, and she helped us a great deal with contacting candidates and getting all of our information up. And so she's going to help us with timing. Do you have your signs ready?
Yes, I
do
do.
signs. Okay, 30 seconds and 0 seconds. And we are going to hold you to it. We're going to be stricter than those people on CNN because we really want to get through everything and we want to leave plenty of time for people to ask questions. So once again, you can type your question for the candidate into the chat box, or you can just use the little raise hand symbol, and our CE people will help us keep track of that. How do I get rid of that? Remove pin. There we go. Hi, Vicki. Okay, we'll remove your pin too. All right, so let's get started. We have both of our candidates for the Oregon House District 33 position. Just a quick reminder, Mitch Greenlick was our state rep from District 33, and District 33 traverses the hills. There is some of it over in the Pearl District, and then a good deal of it is over here in Cedar Mill, CPO 1. And so that's our rep. And we have, where did they go? We need Dick Carter and we need Maxine. Where is Maxine? We asked her to, there we go. Ask to start video.
Yes, Virginia, this is Maxine. I am actually driving. We had an emergency at our cabin in government camp, so I'm still on my way home. So I don't think it's appropriate to have my video looking, or I'm not going to be looking at the camera.
Okay, well, we've got you listed first. Are you ready to go?
Sure, I can go.
Or we can have Dick go first and then give you a little more time to be ready.
However you prefer. I'm happy to talk and drive. That's fine too.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and have you say your piece. You have 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you all so much. And I'm sorry that I'm not on video, but I think it's probably better for everyone. I was crawling around under our house today. So my name is Maxine Dexter. I am a doctor with Kaiser Permanente Medical Group, and I've been here in Oregon for 13 years, been a doctor here the whole time, and I am currently serving as Mitch Greenlick's replacement in the Oregon House, and have been really honored and privileged to have that opportunity to serve you. I have gotten a little bit of an opportunity to interact with different folks over this time, but this is the most important part, in all honesty, of being a representative, is being engaged and understanding where people are. And those emails and phone calls that I'm getting have made such an impact on my understanding of where people are right now, because with this pandemic, more than any other time, it's really local politics and
Whoop, I think we lost her. Uh-oh.
addressing the issues.
Oh, there we go.
I can really point that your, sorry, I wasn't sure if you were, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying something. So, you know, just our national elected leaders are critical, but in these times of local disruption and frustration and really consternation, I think, for a lot of folks with their unemployment or getting services or childcare, I really think that it's our local politicians who can really help address those needs. I grew up in Bothell, Washington. I'm the first and only person in my family to go to college, and I had a dream of being a doctor that was inspired by a fifth grade teacher. I grew up in a house without any books, and so I had never really heard of college and didn't know what it was until this amazing teacher of mine asked me where I wanted to go to college one day. And after he explained what it was, I decided I'd be a doctor, and honestly, I never looked back. So the University of Washington was an affordable place for me to be able to go as an in-state resident and a union job at with UFCW at a local Albertsons, is how not only did I have a living wage, but I also had full health care benefits. And having reproductive freedom to know when and how I was going to have a child when I chose to have a child was really crucial to being able to be empowered to achieve my dreams. My husband and I got married at the end of medical school and moved to Colorado, where we trained for 8 years, and then came back to Oregon, where my family was in Olympia and Lincoln City, and so between the two, we decided Portland was where we wanted to be. Seattle has become truly unlivable, and Portland has all the local empowerment and neighborhoods and drivability and all those things that I really care about and really am determined to protect. So my major issues that I'm addressing with my legislative concepts for this 2021 session are healthcare, workers, and environment. And I've been very active in my caucus already, leading the way on some really important COVID issues, whether it's our adults in custody who were moved during the wildfires and really had some major COVID exposure, or PPE for our local frontline workers. My caucus has already started to lean on me, and I plan to really lead in healthcare in 2021. I'm grateful for your time. I cannot say enough how important it is to hear from you. And Representative Greenlick really set a high standard for newsletters. And so I would love for you all to join mine and also give me feedback on whether or not I'm hitting the bar that he set so high. So my representative email is rep.maxinedexter@oregonlegislature.gov. And you can always get in touch with me through maxinefororegon@gmail.com, and we can plug you into the newsletter, which we'll have one coming out tomorrow, or we can get you onto the official representative one as well. So I've got those two lists. My cell number is this one, and I'm happy for people to have it and reach out. Like that, I will answer it. People seem a little bit surprised sometimes, but please text me. Let me know what you need. 503-308-3848. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from Mr. Porter.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation. We will now hear from Dick Corder, and participants, attendees, you can go ahead and start putting some questions in, but we won't start reading those until we've heard from Dick. Dick, go ahead.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, very well. Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to chat with you this evening. Yes, my name is Dick Corder, and I am running for state representative. And I am a forest consultant, a professional forest consultant. I've been living in the Cedar Mill area actually since 1978. So I've been here for a little while. I live actually right sort of in Multnomah County, but I'm right on the county line. I can look right down the hill and see Washington County. I look right into Beaverton from my house. I've been working with landowners that own timberland, family owners that own timberland for numerous years. I am a past director for the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. I spent about roughly 10 years on that board. I have served on numerous advisory committees across the state of Oregon, most of them within the Department of Forestry. One of the most recent ones was the Salmon, the Steelhead, and the Bull Trout Advisory Committee, which were putting together ideas and thoughts about how the Forest Practices Act could be improved to cover those species of fish. I am currently the vice chair of the National Woodlands Owners Association and the immediate past chair of that organization. I'm also the past president of the Association of Consulting Foresters of America. I've been active in those two programs for many, many years, as well as the American Tree Farm System. I've kind of bounced around, in the Washington, D.C. area, somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 years. I've sort of forgotten, lost track of it when I first started going into D.C. There was a period of time that I was actually traveling into D.C. between 3 and 4 times a year to talk with our legislators, primarily on natural resources issues. And so I know Washington, D.C. pretty well. I actually worked on 2 different farm bills during the time when I was going back and forth into D.C. I've kind of relaxed a little bit and retired a little bit from making those trips into D.C. in the last few years, but I still do maybe 1 a year, sometimes 2 a year. I decided to run this time because I'm pretty concerned about several issues, one of which I would characterize as runaway taxes. The one example of that most recently has been implemented is the corporate activity tax, commonly known as the CAT tax. And we were actually told by our legislators that tax would not work and tax individuals like ourselves. Well, many of us knew that was not really the case, because we all pretty much know that corporations and businesses don't absorb taxes within their business. They have to pass them on in order to keep their business alive. That tax is 10% of their gross sales, which is really an expensive tax. And when you take 10% off their gross sales, that comes right out of the net that they make on their business, which they're doing very, very well. If they net between 3 and 5%, that's a pretty common net on most businesses these days. It has been for years. So that has been a concern of mine, the kinds of taxes that we are saddled with. I would like to try to reduce the amount of taxes that we get. Another concern that I have is transparency in government, and the CAT tax was a perfect example of transparency. As I just mentioned, we were told that everyone was convinced that it would not be taxed individually, but I've talked with a number of folks that have bought various items, including machinery, including household items, and when they get their go to the cash register to pay their bill, they see a little insert at the bottom that says CAT tax, and a few extra cents or dollars are added on it. I think there's probably some businesses that are just absorbing, or not really absorbing it, but they're folding it into the price of their goods, and they're not really explaining to you and I that we're actually paying for it, but we are. Another concern I have is the last 2 legislative sessions, there's been a little clause that's been called the emergency clause. What that does is not allow us as citizens to have the opportunity to vote on controversial issues that are before the legislature. Now, some will argue, yes, that can happen, but it's difficult. I'm concerned about the supermajority, And I'm also concerned about the wildfires. And if you want to look at my website, which is dickcorder.com, you'll see a little video there of me discussing with everyone wildfires, and I'll be certainly happy to answer any questions. And my website certainly has an awful lot more information, so you can go there and find out a lot more about me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for staying in the time slot. Okay. We have one question already, and this is for both of you. Dick, since you're on camera, you could go ahead and
Okay.
answer first. There's a growing gap between urban and rural communities. Do you have ideas on how to help improve communication, cooperation, and respect between urban and rural folks?
That's a very, very good question. I appreciate that. And obviously, I'm living in an urban area, but I consider myself to be a rural individual. I grew up on a farm in the state of Illinois. My wife and I have 3 small businesses, one of which is the Skyline Yucca Christmas Tree Farm. Another, of course, is the consulting business I just talked about, and another is a tree farm in Vernonia. If you're wondering what that tree behind me is, that's on my property in Vernonia. But anyhow, I think I'm very good at conversing with both individuals within the urban community and within the rural area, because I've lived both places. I've chatted with all kinds of folks in both places, and I get along with everyone in that community. So thank you.
Ms. Dexter, are you listening? Did you get the question? Yeah, there she is.
Yep, I was just muted because I didn't want everyone to hear my car noise.
Yeah.
So I absolutely believe that that's a critical element. I think the rural as well as the urban areas have bigger divisions than just the land that they live on or how much area is around them or the kinds of work they do. In fact, I think broadband is a huge issue that we have got to get our more outlying communities connected. We are seeing that right now with COVID-19 really definitively, that we are really leaving some of our rural children behind because they don't have access to the virtual classrooms that a lot of our other families do. So that is a first priority in a lot of ways for me. I think we're learning really quite quickly, and Virginia, you are a testament to this, on how to conduct virtual meetings and how to really hear from people in a meaningful way. And we have seen much greater engagement from our outlying communities with the town halls that we've had. Senator Steiner Hayward and Representative Helm and I had one, and they were a little bit dubious about my wanting to have one because they said nobody ever comes. But in fact, they were astounded by how many people joined us. And I think it really is this ability to dial in from wherever you are. And we have got to empower our rural communities to have meaningful access in that regard. I also think that citizen engagement in a kind of systematized way is critical for the policies that are going to impact them most. So whether it's forestry management or farm stipends or supports or housing communities and affordable housing in our urban areas, we've got to have the folks who are most impacted at the table. And I am really dedicated to doing that. I am a blue collar worker, having gotten myself to medical school. My family is all blue collar. My brother is a mechanic, and my other brother is he's a logger, not so much anymore, but that's another story, as many of you know, in Oregon. And we all feel very committed to maintaining our community wherever we sit. And my sentiments are not about being a privileged, uphanded urban leader. I am literally get in the dirt and get the work done, and I'm fiduciarily committed to making sure that we don't overtax anyone. We have got to tax those who live at the top and are committed to doing what they can to support everyone else. And I do believe that as someone, okay.
We've
Thank
got
you.
more questions coming in, so I wanted to share a comment from Jody Weiser, who is our local resident tax expert. She's a resident of CPO 7, but we hear from her frequently about tax issues, and she said that the cap tax is about 0.5% and not 10%. And that's just a comment, it's not a question.
Can I comment on that, please?
Sure.
I stand corrected. After I said that, after the 0 seconds came up, I realized I had misstated in that. But just as a quick example for everybody to understand, a good friend of mine just bought a piece of equipment that was roughly $15,000. And when he went to pay the final bill on, it was about $550 to $560 extra he had to pay on that piece of equipment. And I've actually bought like a $9.99 piece of goods that I had to pay another 50 cents on. So it does count up. It's not a cheap tax.
I have a question myself, and I'm going to pile in here because it's my burning question. Most of CPO 1 is urban unincorporated Washington County. And there are lots of state laws that apply to cities and not to counties. And the counties fight every time we try to get something that will apply to our urban county area. For example, people in counties are supposed to pay for repairs to their adjacent sidewalk, whether or not they can reach it. The cities have allowances for that. I tried to get a bill through the legislature a few years ago with the assistance of Representative Greenlick, and the Association of Oregon Counties just shot us down. It was definitely a lesson in civics for me, but how can each of you fight for those of us in urban unincorporated areas as opposed to those in cities to get us the kind of representation we need? Go ahead, Ms. Dexter.
Thanks. So this is when I was able to knock on doors before the primary. This was one of the top issues in unincorporated Washington County that I heard a lot about. And I think that there's a couple different ways to look at it. Number one, there's a lot of history, as you all know, probably better than I do, about wanting to stay unincorporated. There is a lot of autonomy and local engagement that is, superseding.
And cities won't have us. It isn't necessarily a choice. I mean, people say that we don't want to pay the taxes, but Beaverton's not interested in annexing us. So here we sit.
Well, I understood that Bethany, anyway, I'm not going to try to teach anyone a historical lesson, but Mitch Greenlick and I talked about this quite a lot before he passed away. And it was his feeling after being, representative for so many years that there were a lot of folks who really wanted to maintain that independence and that it really wasn't necessarily that the cities didn't want them. But I think that now that's clearly the case. And so I'm not trying to dispute that. But what I do think we can do is once again, we have got to get the right infrastructure for unincorporated Washington County. You know better than I do that the schools on the north side of 26, there's not enough land for them. And that's a major issue for Beaverton Public Schools. There's not enough easy access to highways. There's traffic congestion. There are indomitable problems now because there's been so much development and those areas weren't pre-planned. And so how we do that really is going to take some planning and a lot of stakeholder engagement from the community, because it's going to have to be some changes that you all help us understand what we can do. And at the state level, we don't have as much prerogative as you were just speaking to as the county. And so I know Commissioner Treese is on, and perhaps she would have more ways to school me on this should I earn your vote and have the privilege to continue in this role. But I think the county commissioners are really your major representatives, and those are the folks that I would want to engage with to see how I can facilitate their serving
Okay,
the
we need
communities.
to hear from Dick, and there are some really good questions that are we're not going to have time to answer. And I would like to capture those and send them to you all, to Dick and Maxine, to answer these questions from our audience, if you're willing, and I will post them on the CPO1 Facebook page. I don't have any control over our CPO1 county page, but maybe they'll allow us to post that information there too. So the other questions, my internet connection is unstable, huh?
Do I get to answer that question as well?
Yeah, please go ahead. You got a couple, you got a minute.
I just saw Vicky put up a 30-second. Am I
I
going to do the 30
We'll-
seconds?
We'll slide a little. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, that's really a very, very good question. I've been asked a number of times, particularly with regards to bare land values and property values within the urban growth boundary. As you probably well know, they're not cheap these days. And so I've been asked that question about how can we get the land prices inside the urban growth boundary at a more reasonable rate so that the house prices themselves can be a more reasonable rate to allow the younger generation to be able to get into their first home. Well, you probably remember that Senate Bill 100 is the one that really put that all those things together that caused the urban growth boundaries to be constricted the way they are. So what I would like to do, if I could encourage you to vote for me, is work in the legislature to somehow modify and adjust Senate Bill 100 to cover all the issues that you talked about, Virginia, in terms of trying to get all the kinds of structural kinds of things that need to be done, the sewers and the roads and all those kind of things, and get that so that the urban growth boundaries can be expanded a little bit. And that sort of is that little question, going back to the earlier question of working with the urban folks and working with the rural folks. And I think it's possible to do that. It's gonna take some time to do it though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will, I'm hoping Marcus can maybe copy some of these questions so that we can post them to, we'll email them to the candidates and get some more answers. I do not see that Mary Nolan has joined our discussion. So we will go ahead and go to Chris Smith, who is running for Metro Council position number 5. Oh, nice rose garden you got there, Chris. And I think we need to unmute him. Is he unmuted?
I think I have it.
There you go. Okay, so you have 5 minutes to present your case. Why should we vote for you for Metro Council?
Okay, I'll try and keep it short so we have a little more time for questions. Hi, I'm Chris Smith, and I am running for Metro District 5. That is the Peninsula Park Rose Garden behind me. That's about at the middle of my district. You guys are the far western edge, so thank you for welcoming me into your meeting. I have served in a variety of policymaking roles as a volunteer over the last 25 years. That includes 11 years on the Portland Planning and Sustainability Commission, service on both the Metro Policy Advisory Committee and the Transportation Policy Alternatives Committee at Metro. So I have a great background in land use and transportation planning, exactly the things that are at the core of Metro's mission. I'm running on essentially 3 items and then a process of how I'm running. So my core platform planks are climate change. I have been working to make the region more sustainable for all of those 25 years that I've been in policymaking roles. And I believe it's critical that we get serious at this juncture about meeting the requirements to keep global warming under 1.5 degrees C. We have about 10 years to do that. We have to take about half of the carbon out of our economy. I'm committed to working on that, particularly in the transportation sector, where I've spent a lot of my time advocating. 42% of the greenhouse gases in our region come from transportation, and they're going up instead of down. We need to get a handle on that. Housing is another huge issue. I think you all know that this region has a affordable housing crisis and a homelessness crisis. We are fortunate that the voters have trusted Metro with significant resources to work on that, both an affordable housing bond measure 2 years ago that I helped campaign for, and then on the May ballot, the same ballot my primary was on, a supportive services measure to bring services to help people get off the street, whether they need mental health services, substance abuse services, if they just need help with a rental payment so they don't fall into homelessness. It's much more effective to keep somebody out of homelessness than try and pick them up off the street. And I've worked on housing on the Planning and Sustainability Commission in Portland over the last 10 years. We've rewritten most of Portland's housing policies. I want to take that knowledge to Metro and help make them more effective in spending that money effectively, efficiently, and for the benefit of the voters, accountably to the voters. Third issue is racial justice. I think like all governments, we're coming around to understand that it's not just enough to be equitable. We have to be actively anti-racist in our policies. I know I've had some opportunities to work at reversing the legacy of racist policies that were built into Portland's zoning code. We need to continue to do that at Metro. And then finally, I want to distinguish the way I'm running. I have opted out of big money contributions. I'm limiting contributions in my race to $500. And in fact, we've been rewarded for that with more than 600 individual donors who have given us anywhere from $5 to $500, a lot more closer to $5. But we've been able to fundraise competitively with those restrictions and run a good race. So I am looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have Mary Nolan, except she's masquerading as Mark Gardner. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your convening this gathering and for the invitation to participate. Chris and I saw each other earlier tonight on another event. And I'll open just by putting myself in context for the Metro position. Portland and Eastern Washington County are really liberal communities, and I mean that in three senses of the word. First, to the left on the political spectrum, but also liberal means marked by generosity and broad-minded. And I'm really attracted to those definitions of liberal. In all three senses of the word liberal, I'm perfectly aligned with District 5 within the Metro region and for the seat on the council. My advocacy and leadership for generous policies and programs spans all the way across Metro's authority. I've led efforts to create and expand green space programs, both at the city level and statewide. I've created, with a coalition, a vastly popular and effective curbside recycling program, and I've led efforts to expand the state's bottle bill. I've led a very diverse, often specifically opposed, conflicting coalition to overhaul the entire state land use system. One of the candidates for state rep talked about Senate Bill 100. We did an update similar to what he was talking about in 2011, and I led that as chair of the Land Use Committee. I sparked and funded innovative transportation policies to move away from fossil fuels and to reduce greenhouse gases caused by the transportation system. And I created and then secured the votes to pass a new funding mechanism for the state that tripled the amount of money available to invest in affordable housing. But that's my warm-up act. I am known as a convener, a problem solver, a collaborator. That's the broad-minded aspect of how I am liberal. I work with people from all viewpoints, all life experiences, all interests. My core values don't waver, but I'm also humble and honest enough to know when and admit that I've either erred or I've allowed, in fact, worked at evolving my perspective as I gather new information, as people open new viewpoints to me. I work constantly, in fact, to expand my insight, to support the goals of accomplished as well as emerging leaders in our community. I respect public examination of issues and respectful debate. I often learn more, in fact, from those with different points of view than I do from people who are allied with my point of view. In all, I commit myself to creating relationships in which allies and opponents alike feel comfortable and respected when they correct my mistakes or show me errors in my reasoning. Sam Chase, who is currently representing this district on the Metro Council, admirably and effectively represented this district for 8 years with this same approach, and I'm aiming to continue that success. I look forward to tonight's discussion. Thanks.
Virginia, okay. Thank you.
I don't see any questions, but I have one. Here in Cedar Mill and CPO 1, many of our residents have to commute to get to Portland. And Chris, as much as I admire the bicycles and so forth, we can't, not all of us can ride over those hills. We have asked Metro to help moderate between Portland Transportation and Washington County, and Metro has repeatedly told us that they don't get involved in interjurisdictional issues. But if not Metro, who will? We can't get the Portland Bureau of Transportation has told us literally that if they improve the roads between Washington County and Portland, people will just drive on them. And that leaves a lot of people stuck, well, before COVID, at least it did, stuck wasting hours and hours in traffic and with very little transit options in our area. And yet we've been told that Metro just doesn't want to get involved in dealing with the needs of inter-county commuting. So if you guys could maybe briefly chat about whether you see any role for Metro in helping out the people who work in Portland and live in Washington County. Go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. I appreciate the question. So Metro has a responsibility to make sure that the transportation system works across the whole Portland region. And of course, I hold climate as a very dear value and the need to address that. So I'm not going to encourage more driving, but I think we have to provide solutions that fit the areas. And I recognize that we have not done very well in transit in areas like Cedar Mill. I live on the other side of the hill in Northwest Portland, so I'm familiar with those roads that people from Washington County have to drive through. I see the traffic every day coming down off Cornell Road. We need to do better on transit. No reason there shouldn't be a bus on Cornell Road. There's certainly enough traffic flowing through that corridor that we ought to be able to find ways to accommodate it on transit. I appreciate the concern about bicycles, and it's not the solution for everybody. I would tell you that e-bikes are the new coming thing. I've been riding an e-bike now for a couple of years, and it flattens out the hills. So again, won't be the solution for everybody, but I think there are probably some people who haven't been able to think about using a bicycle who could make it work with an e-bike. And one of my platform planks is to have Metro encourage the state legislature to extend the electrical vehicle rebate. So it's not just on electric cars, but also on electric bikes, so we can make them more affordable. There's still a relatively steep price tag. But yeah, I mean, we have to fit our solutions to the topography and the nature of the communities. And
Right.
somebody in Cedar Mill does not have the same opportunities that somebody who's directly on the blue line or the red line has.
We allowed development up in our foothills for years.
Before you get off that, can I make a comment?
Yeah, I absolutely want you to. Go ahead.
I don't quite understand why the people you have talked with claim that Metro doesn't have a responsibility and it doesn't get involved in interjurisdictional debates or disagreements.
We were told by Catherine
That's
Harrington.
the very purpose of Metro's JPAC, which is a regional committee to sort out investments in transportation. And it is definitely what, I mean, Metro, everybody knows, has referred to the voters a very sizable transportation investment program, which would be both construction as well as programmatic changes in corridors and support for TriMet to expand both the territory and also the frequency.
Oh, wow, we're going to get to that bond measure.
Okay, but whether that passes or not, my point to your question about Metro's role is that Metro can't shy away from its responsibility to bring together, to coalesce the whole region and find regional solutions that work for people living in North Portland, people living in Cedar Mill, people living out in Rose City Park, all neighborhoods within the district that I want to represent.
Okay, we've got some more questions from our audience. Metro's proposed 2 very large new tax levies this year. Do you expect to see Metro propose further tax increases in the next few years? I think that's pretty predictive. I'm not sure that either of these folks can actually answer that. I'm going to go on to unless you guys have a comment about it. Who knows?
My comment would be the community asked Metro to refer the supportive services measure in the spring because Metro is uniquely positioned to do exactly what we talked about with transportation, to do it with homeless services, because homelessness and mental health needs and economic needs don't stop at a county boundary or a city limit. And the community came to Metro and said, you're the right place to both organize these programs and have consistent funding for them across the region. Metro initiated the transportation referral on its own, and I think it is valid for the same reasons. Traffic, as you just mentioned, from Cedar Mill into downtown Portland crosses county line, it may cross city lines. Those jurisdictions need a regional forum where they can resolve their problems.
I need to let Chris answer.
Measures, I think Metro has a lot on its plate right now.
Right.
And we need to get those services done right before we expand them.
Yeah, I would agree with that Metro is going to have to spend a couple of years just getting up to speed on housing. You know, Metro did not have a policy shop on housing in-house before the supportive services measure was passed. So I think our attention will be quite consumed, and I don't expect any proposals for big new topic areas for Metro in the next few years.
Okay. I see we've got a raised hand. We'll get to him soon. We have a couple of questions about Metro's role in the violence occurring in downtown Portland. Do you see, Chris, I'll let you start on this. Do you see any role for Metro in improving that? And as long as we're talking about downtown Portland, some people have asked about the homelessness in downtown Portland as well. So we'll have an omnibus.
Okay, well, the clear answer is Metro has no policing function. So that is between the city, the county, and the state police. And I'm happy that's one issue we probably don't have to talk about at Metro very often. With regard to homelessness, there is a huge role. The homeless services measure, the revenue for that will come on next year. Mary has talked about maybe borrowing against that to bring it forward. That's not a bad idea. But certainly we have to put together a whole web of service providers to meet those people on the street where they are, what their needs are, and give them effective paths out of homelessness, even as we're building more affordable housing using the bond measure money. So yeah, Metro is going to have a huge role in that.
Okay, Paul, you're on.
Can I make a comment on that question while we're still on?
I'm sorry, yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
I know you think I'm Mark Gardner, so your screen is lying to you. Oh, you fixed it. I'm myself again. Thank you to the technology gods.
Right.
I agree that Metro doesn't have policing authority, policing responsibility, or law enforcement expertise. So doesn't have any direct responsibility for making sure we protect the right to protest while at the same time protecting the safety of human beings who are hurt by not so much protesters, but hooligans. And I think it's pretty easy to distinguish people who are peacefully protesting and exercising their right to assembly and people who are just out picking a fight. But Metro does have responsibility in the area of homelessness. And I have been urging Metro counselors and Metro staff to really accelerate their response. The organizations of the community of the region and the leaders of community organizations came to Metro and said, we have a very pressing homelessness crisis. It needs immediate response. And Metro, the campaign, not Metro, but the campaign pitched it as a crisis, told voters, we know what we need to do. If you'll just approve the funding, we will go about solving this problem. And it's been almost 6 months and Metro has not done anything. It hasn't initiated any specific services with that approval from the voters. And I am not patient. When we ask the voters to help us solve a crisis, we have to keep faith, treat it like the crisis it is, and begin immediately. Winter's coming. Human beings will be left sleeping in the rain and the wind if we don't do something. Neighborhoods will be, will suffer having a disruptive, sometimes dirty encampments because we haven't delivered the social services that will help the people be safe and find shelter inside, away from neighborhoods.
Okay, Paul Parker, are you ready to ask your question?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. This is for Chris Smith. I live in Cedar Mill. I enjoyed what you were saying, Chris, so I fished out the voters pamphlet to learn more about you as you're talking. I did notice that under your list of endorsements, it includes Metro President David Bragdon and Rex Burkholder and Portland Commissioner Steve Novick. I think, although I'm in unincorporated Washington County, I think they are all gone. It's probably good for you to clarify that if I'm right, and if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me.
You're correct. And if you go to my website where there's no limit on the word count, you will see that the word former appears in front of all of those. The voter pamphlet gives us a very small number of words to try and get across as many ideas as we can. So I'll apologize for being abbreviated in the way I presented that, but you were factually correct and my website makes that very clear.
So Chris, you could have abbreviated even further by simply listing leaders across the region as David Bragdon, formerly of Oregon, etc. I do think, I mean, I respect what you stand for, what you said, and I enjoyed what you had to say, and I'm glad you're running, but it's a sort of a detail of precision that behooves would-be legislators, because we know that the details of the law can be interpreted in many ways and sliced and diced by those lawyers.
Fair criticism, but I'll point out that if you go to my opponent's voter pamphlet statements, you'll see that she calls out an endorsement from Governor Roberts and does not say former Governor Roberts. We're all squeezed by those word counts.
Excellent point, thank you.
Not exactly an excellent point. Etiquette,
Don't contradict a voter.
etiquette has it that governors maintain their title throughout their lifetime, not true with metro councilors or city commissioners.
That's a little, that's honest and true, but not honorable.
Actually,
Okay.
it is governors, presidents, and vice presidents.
Yeah.
You'll notice that in the debate, Joe Biden is referred to as Vice President Biden.
Right.
Yep. I hope you'll call Donald Trump President Trump after he's been voted out of office.
It's time for us to move on to our next topic. So here I go, cracking the whip. Let's go ahead. We have two of our oh my God. We need to bring on Casey.
All three are here now.
Moberg. CE, can you bring on Casey Story and Dean Moberg?
They are promoted to panelists, and they have the ability to turn their cameras on and unmute themselves. And we have Dean, Kieran, and Casey all here.
Dean, where are you?
I'm getting a message that says the host has stopped my video.
There you are. I didn't even see you come in.
Yeah, so I'm not able to turn on my video.
Really?
Yeah, it says the host has stopped it.
I asked you to start it.
I'm fully clothed and everything. It's okay to.
See, there we go. Okay. So Karen, we'll just go Dean, Casey, Karen. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Virginia and Bruce, for organizing this event. And thank you to the audience for participating, being interested in these races and
I've
these
had
issues.
quite a bit of help. Bruce helped me get everybody lined up and invited. So thanks to Bruce too.
Good, good, good. So Dean Moberg, I am running for a seat on the Tualatin and Soil and Water Conservation District. This is a local agency that does a remarkable job in helping Washington County residents, both urban and rural, conserve natural resources. It's led by a 7-person board of directors. These are unpaid, nonpartisan, essentially volunteer positions. Okay, so a little bit about me. I earned a bachelor's degree in plant science from the University of California, Davis, a master's in teaching from Cornell University, and a PhD in environmental science and engineering from OHSU. While I was a student at UC Davis and Cornell, I worked on farms in California, Illinois, and upstate New York. After Cornell, I taught high school agriculture for 3 years, and then I began a 35-year career with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service. For 25 of those 35 years, I was stationed in Hillsborough, where I worked really on a daily basis with the Conservation District. And for most of those 25 years, we actually shared an office in Hillsborough. So I know the staff, I know the directors, I know the programs and the history of the district, I know their partners. So when I retired from USDA this March, it just kind of felt logical to me and natural to me to volunteer for the Conservation District. So I did that. and I serve on their budget committee, their oak restoration committee. I'm helping with a wetland restoration project south of Forest Grove, and I'm what's called a associate director, and now I'm running for the vacant seat on the board of directors. If I'm elected, I sort of organize my thoughts into really kind of focusing on 3 areas. One is to provide what I like to think of when I was in USDA as unexpectedly excellent service to people, so that when we're done working with someone, whether it's a farmer, forester, or somebody in an urban area, they look at us and say, wow, you work for a government agency and you're really all this helpful. You really are here to help us. And to do that, we have to continue to recruit and train superb staff. We need really good, consistent communication. In fact, I think we should be doing these kinds of events throughout the years instead of just during election years. And we need to have a conscientious budget. Second place I would focus is on what I kind of like to call 21st century natural resource problems. The big one to me is climate change. Associated with that is healthy, resilient, diverse forests that are resistant to forest fires. I'm kind of passionate about improving soil health. I think we need to work on improving pollinator habitat and songbird habitat. And we need to work on water conservation. And then also really is a natural resource issue also is we need to help preserve family farms and family forests. The third area I'd like to work on is partnerships. The Conservation District has had some excellent partnerships, and that to me is the way that conservation happens, is when the Conservation District partners with other agencies, with nonprofits, and with residents, and we're all working towards the same goals. Washington County is diverse. There's a lot of historically underserved communities here, and I think that's one place where the district can do some more work, is to focus on bringing those historically underserved folks into our partnerships and help design our programs. And just as an example of that is the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Their reservation is in Polk County, but they have an eternal interest in the lands of the Tualatin River watershed. And so I would like to invite them into our planning process and help us work on those 21st century problems and bring their wisdom to bear on solutions. So again, thank you all for being here, and remember to vote and get your ballot in on time. Thanks.
Great. Okay, Casey, are you ready to present your?
I am, thanks.
Okay.
Casey Story, thanks for the chance to speak with you. Like Dean said, thanks for putting this together. It's really nice to get questions from folks and to see everybody or hear from everybody. I'm a resident of Forest Grove, and I'm an environmental project manager with David Evans and Associates in Portland. I grew up in Southeast Portland, and I've gone to college all around the country, but I came back to Washington County about 13 years ago and have worked and lived here since. I'm the 5th generation of my family to live here, including some farm history in the Fano Creek area and out in North Plains. In my work life, I serve as a permit specialist and manage projects that include restoration and preservation enhancement projects specific to the Tualatin River. I work with Clean Water Services, THPRD, other kind of partners with the Soil Water Conservation District. Daily in my work life, and even in my private personal life, I negotiate with state, local, and federal regulators on projects for clients that I work with in my work life, and on projects of my own at home. I have an educational background in fish wildlife management. I studied agroecosystems and agroecology in the arid Southwest. I've worked on a number of farms. I've got a background in conservation and sustainable development, and I have a MBA in sustainable business administration. I currently volunteer with the Lower Nahum Community Trust at the coast, where part of my family lives, and I've served on the board of that organization. I'm really excited for the opportunity to serve on the board of directors for Tualatin Soil Water Conservation District. I think the district and districts in general are really unique organizations. Dean alluded to it. They advance a lot of goals that really anybody can get behind, all residents of Washington County and the other counties where they operate. Preservation and protection of clean rivers and streams, support of local food production, support of small farms, and sustainability of local agriculture, general environmental health. There are many government entities like this. It's nice that this is a apolitical position. There aren't other organizations that really have this broad a range of quality of life missions like the district does. This is additionally amplified because our county is really unique. We have, incredible diversity in our people, but we also in our agricultural products and in our demand for natural resources because we're urbanizing place. And we also have about half of our counties in forest, and is really kind of a wild place that has forest management as a big part of the industry. I want to bring my energy and life interest to the district to advance these quality of life goals for you and voters in Washington County, and to keep and improve our quality of life in Washington County. I bring a valuable administrative background and successful project and budget management in my work life. I have an education, as I mentioned, in sustainable agriculture, environmental resources, and sustainable development. And a work direct familiarity with district partners, including local watershed councils, Clean Water Services, THPRD, the cities in Washington County. I work with all these regulatory bodies, negotiating projects, including enhancement projects and restoration projects. If you elect me, I'll bring my passion, my personal passion, and my work energy that I always have to projects to advance quality of life issues. That's the mission of the district. So thanks for the time and the opportunity to speak to you. That's all.
Is it my turn? I couldn't hear you, Virginia.
I'm sorry, I was muted. You're on.
Okay, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be with everybody. I'm actually on vacation camping, so I hope you can hear me and see me. So this is the best I could do. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And actually, Casey and Dean are, I'm actually really excited for the district because there's a lot of competition. I think great candidates, and I feel like the public has a lot of. I think no matter who gets elected, I'll be excited for the district and the representation moving forward. So I'm actually very. Well, I was late because I was recently voted on to the board to fill an interim position for John McDonald, who'd been on the board for about 27 years. So big shoes to fill for the position that we're all running for. And so I've been privileged to get a chance to at least be in the board in the interim for the last few months of the year. And hopefully we'll get to continue next year. But if not, I trust that Dean or Casey will do a great job. And I'm here just to share a little bit about me and my background as a civil engineer. I've been very passionately working on projects, including restoration, sustainability, holistic land management, all the way from the home scale up to large watersheds. I spent my background is in engineering. I studied food, biological, and agricultural engineering, as well as civil engineering at Ohio State University, the other OSU, as I fondly call it. And I've had the pleasure of volunteering and working on a number of farms over the last 20 years. I had my first experience farming woofing, so working on organic farms, and both internationally and domestically. And I've just really developed a passion and for getting my hands dirty, literally, figuratively, and this is a passion project and passionate work. I love being able to contribute back to the community by doing work that I think is very central to human health and community development with regards to, Dean and Casey both mentioned soil health. I mean, it's critical to, I think, our survival as humans. Societies have thrived and failed based on how they care for their soils. And so I think the district actually has a very critical focus in how they blend education, outreach, training, technical assistance, and project implementation. It's just really exciting. It's fun to be able to contribute to an organization that works at all these scales. And so I am just very excited to bring the practices that I've had. I actually worked for a number of years in arid communities. So I moved here from Arizona and have worked in a number of different climates. And I presented at the Sustainable Stormwater Symposium on climate change and drought. And I made all these jokes about, hey, you know, climate change is coming. We're going to be like Phoenix soon. And you know, I made light of it. But then afterwards, I was shocked at the number of people asking me questions about water harvesting and the sustainability and challenges around water quality. So I think a lot of what I can bring and will bring to the community is how we can better address our water resources from a project implementation perspective, policy. I've helped a number of cities develop green stormwater infrastructure funds, both from getting the funding passed, working with mayor and council. And so I bring some experience working on different advisory committees, interacting with the public as well as decision makers. And so just trying to blend, you know, all the blood, sweat, and tears that I have from the field and doing projects and using that to develop and implement policy. So I think that's a strength of the work that I've developed as a consultant. So my professional life, I work for West Consultants as an engineering consultant. And I think that's a big strength to be able to have sweated it out in the trenches, flung some mud, dirt, and rock, put some trees in the ground, and then be able to turn that into larger scale watershed plans and policy developments and implementing projects. So I think, you know, we've been shown the challenges with COVID of what that means for human health. And I actually think there's a big role for the district to play in enhancing the health community, health and resilience through the types of projects that they implement. So I'm just really excited about the district in general. My other two fellow candidates, I think I'm excited for the district, and vote for me or vote for them. I think it's gonna be great either way.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to bring everybody in. And I haven't seen any questions from the audience, but boy, I have one. One of the big issues in Washington County right now is our Goal 5 commitments. The state land use Goal 5 to protect natural resources, wildlife, environment, and that versus the pressure to develop. The county is just about, I guess, to pass Ordinance 869, which is in response to the lawsuit that the LCDC injunction against development until the county had better response to Goal 5. Looks like somebody else asked the same question. But in any case, does Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District have any role in that? I know you're not very political, but would you see the district having any role in helping to protect? We need to unmute everybody. Helping to protect the natural resources in Washington County. There, long story short.
Well, yeah, I
Dean?
mean, certainly.
Go ahead, Dean.
Certainly, that is the role of the conservation district, is to help protect and improve natural resources. Kind of related to that is a question in the Q&A. It asks if we would support changes to the land use protection laws that I think basically it's asking that it would kind of require certain measures of soil health to be considered a farm. I would not support that. Soil health is a difficult thing that we're just learning how to measure now. We know quite a bit about it, but to come up with a metric that says this is absolutely good and this is absolutely bad, and then change someone's zoning because of that, I just don't think that would work. I think much better, especially because so much of these things are based on what farmers tell us voluntarily instead of what we can go out and measure. Much better to work with people voluntarily to help them do the right thing rather than trying to regulate that.
Okay, Karen or Casey, do you have comments? You need to unmute yourselves.
Yeah,
Casey, go ahead.
Sure. I work with Washington County. I'm familiar with the issues and the current new code CDC being developed, and I sit in on some of those planning commission meetings, and it is that push pull. I mean, this is a perfect example where Washington County, kind of a unique county in that we have this really intense demand for housing adjacent to Portland, and the Intel, Nike, employment centers and those sorts of things. And we also move here and live here because we like the natural resources and we like the access to things and the wonderful urban growth boundary. So we're always, that's always a push pull. And when I sit in on those meetings, some of the commissioners and the volunteers, a lot of them, the same people that advocate for more affordable housing and for open space, it's kind of not necessarily an oxymoron, but it's a challenge that's not easily solvable. And I think the Tualatin Soil Water Conservation District, isn't a regulatory body, but can provide, is helping to provide those other resources and other kind of stopgap measures for resources that are important to county residents. I mean, I think that's where it shines, is that, that organization can't outright protect these things, but we can protect other things, and we can promote, conservation and enhancement.
Karen, we just have a minute or so if you've got a comment.
Not a whole lot to add. I think these guys hit the nail on the head in that there's a lot of great programs that the district has that we use to address.
Now we're losing him.
Oh, sorry, I'm going off. Well, I'll just leave it if you can't hear me.
Okay. We really need to move on. If it was up to me, I'd keep this discussion going on all night because I'm very interested in natural resources. But we have a couple more topics, so we will move along. And Pam, hopefully she's still here. There we go. Hi, Pam.
Good evening. Thank you.
And hold on, I'm working. There we go. Remove pin. And there you are. Hi, Pam.
Good evening.
Thanks very much for coming and helping us to understand these two very interesting changes to the Washington County body of law that are going to make a big difference if they're passed, and people are going to have trouble understanding what they're about and why they should vote for them. So do your thing.
Thank you, Virginia, and good evening to everybody here. Thank you for spending your time learning about what's important to us at the local level. I think, Virginia, when you opened this evening, you talked about making sure that we all vote, making sure that we take that responsibility and exercise our opportunity, but at the same time, make sure that we vote down the ballot and we look to the local issues and we look to the local races, because it's so important to make sure that our quality of life is maintained. So with that, I'm here to talk about the two proposed changes to the Washington County Charter. The first one I'm going to talk about is measure number 34-301. And this is a change to the ordinance season. And that's how it's referred to by most of our public. In Washington County, we have the body takes a break, if you will, from listening to, from taking public testimony and acting on ordinances from the 1st of November to the very end of February. So that's a 4-month break. And there's a long history behind why that's in place. It was put into place many, many years ago. It involved getting to the seat of the county during inclement weather, working to make sure that everybody had a voice. I think that it's clear during our times now, it's critical that we have a full year of operating time to be effective in dealing with our ordinances and making sure that we are working for the residents of the county and we're being effective in the use of our time and the time of the people that are proposing new ordinances. So that in essence is the issue here. It's really, for me, it's critical. It's taking responsibility for our charter and taking responsibility for proposing changes that meet the needs of our constituents. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but I'd like to continue and talk about the other measure first. And that measure is measure number 34-300. And this measure addresses a key element of county governance. Over 40 years ago, the voters put together the piece of the charter, of our charter, that says that we will have a chair who is compensated at 80% of the circuit court judge and 4 part-time commissioners that are compensated at 40% of the chair. That was back, like I said, over 40 years ago. It's when the county had approximately 245,000 people. That's pre-employment centers, pre-max lines, all sorts of things. We have grown. We're a county of over 600,000 people now. We are, as Virginia talked about earlier, we have many cities, but we have large areas of unincorporated Washington County. And we have commissioners that are technically working part-time in a time when I believe that our county needs them to work full-time. We need to make sure that we are represented at the state level. We need to make sure we are adequately as residents of Washington County. We need to make sure we're represented at Metro. We need to make sure we're represented in all of our regional discussions, in our state discussions. And when we are in that type of status, that doesn't necessarily happen. We also have to think to the future about our county. We are projected to be the largest county in terms of population in the next decade. And we need to make sure that we're making changes now. We need to be able to attract people to these offices to run for office that come from a diverse background. We need to make sure that we have younger people that are looking towards seats on our commission. We will be best served as residents of Washington County if we have full-time commissioners acting on our behalf. So with that, first of all, before, I have to go to my close, and that is I would ask you to pass both of these measures. I think they're both very important. So I'm asking for your vote on these. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
And I don't see any. I think, this is kind of county geeky kind of stuff, but it's very, very important to those of us who pay attention to what's going on in the county. And both of these issues have been very important to the CPO folks, to CPO leaders and the CCI. We've been pushing for this for some time, and we really appreciate your championing these issues.
I'd like to take, I noticed that Paul Parker, I believe, made a comment. I'd really like him to talk because I just absolutely love his accent. But Paul, if I could take just a moment longer and explain that what we are proposing is that we remove the language that I mentioned in the charter and replace it with language that we appoint a 5-person salary commission team that would actually make recommendations every odd year on the salaries, taking in the input. These people would be compensation specialists, people who have had experience in this area, And this is the system that's used by other counties throughout the state. So I can't tell you what the exact amounts would be, but I can tell you that the compensation team would be asked to step forward with an appropriate recommendation.
There's several comments here, but I think I can kind of cut through them. This is sort of the first step in making all the commissioner positions full-time, right? This has to be changed before the commissioners can be counted to being full-time commissioners. Is that correct?
Yes, and as I said before, I think for me, there's really two very important issues. Number one, as constituents, we need to be represented in all areas by a full-time commission group. And number two, we need to be able to attract the people of all ages and of all diversities to these jobs so that they do not have to supplement with another job or be in retirement or be in a different situation.
Or be independently wealthy.
Right. So with that, like I said, I'm happy to answer any other questions. I think I'd really ask you to take a look at your voters pamphlet. There, it's in the supplemental voters pamphlet that we all received. Make sure you read that. Make sure you read the arguments in favor. There were no arguments in opposition. So with that, I thank you for your time. I thank you for the work that you all do to make this a better place. Virginia, thank you. And Bruce, thank you for pulling this evening together.
Thank you very much. I think everybody's questions were answered. Just please, everybody vote yes on these. I'm sorry, I'm very partisan. Okay, now thank you very much for attending, Pam, and giving us that good information.
It's been a good evening.
I just found out that Catherine Harrington will be presenting to the CCI on these questions as well. So, and maybe by then we'll have our Facebook page set up so that CCI will be live streamed on Facebook. So anyway, moving right along, we have, I believe, Juan Carlos to present for the Metro measure. Hello.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm here.
There we go.
Great. And I've been listening attentively to the meeting. So do I have the option to share my screen? I do have a nice little presentation. I don't know if that's a possibility. I can certainly try.
CE will have to answer that, but I think you can share your screen.
Yes, you're able to share your screen.
Okay, give me a sec here. I'm trying and do this.
And Juan Carlos, we invite you to come back to a regular meeting of CPO1 sometime and just give us an update.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, can you see my screen? Does this?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can get back to, oh no. Can I get back? Okay, hi. Great, here we are. Hi everyone, my name is Juan Carlos. Very happy to be the Metro Councilor representing this CPO. I was elected in 2018. I'm born and raised in Washington County and have absolutely enjoyed and have been honored and humbled to few years as we worked on some very, very big regional issues, and certainly transportation, which is the measure that we're presenting on is one that is not a new topic of conversation in this CPO that I presented at multiple times in the past. In Virginia, I would certainly love to come back. I think the COVID has certainly changed schedules and communication lines. So I would love to come back. Let's Get Moving 2020, measure 26218, will be on your November ballots. And so the plan was put together over 2 years by a 35-member task force, multiple meetings, tens of thousands of conversations, and people contributing to the measure. Everything from regional conversations to local investment tours, really looking at all the corridors and the programs that we've invested, that we as a community have asked to invest in. You know, one thing that we know for sure is that, you know, these transportation needs have been around for decades, and they will continue to be here for decades. There's no need for me to bring up the congestion on our roadways and the incredible growth that the Portland metro area is facing. And this measure was built in context of addressing congestion in our region, but also establishing a transportation system and infrastructure that can meet the needs of the 21st century, prioritizing climate and climate action, investing in marginalized communities, and unlocking resources for our county partners to not only build the projects in this measure, but also continue to invest in areas that we know need investment in, like North Washington County is definitely one of those. Here are the 17 corridors and a lot of great data and information for you. If we focus in on Washington County, you'll see that TV Highway 185th are some of the corridors in Washington County, as well as some planning dollars for Highway 217. You can see Barnes Road and Burnside are treated as a corridor, a joint corridor, and the measure calls for making a complete street program from the Sunset Transit Center all the way to the end of the Max line in Gresham. And that would include improvements in lighting, improving the road capacity between Portland and Washington County, but also increasing and adding, you know, facilities that are just non-existent. And I know that we heard earlier people saying that, you know, the jurisdictions have struggled to find a solution. And something that is really important about this measure is that we had so many people at the table with Washington County Planning, Land Use and Transportation, PBOT, the city of Beaverton, all of these minds coming together and agreeing that these are the right ways to go about making these improvements. And you can, of course, see all these other really critical improvements to the system that we will be making. Here are some highlights as to what exactly we will be investing in. Nearly 120 miles of roadway improvements, roadway planning of 60 miles, new dedicated bus lanes, transit priority signals, the new Max line for the Southwest Corridor. Safety has been a huge issue that we prioritized at the regional table. You know, recognizing that for a lot of people in the region, especially if you don't live in the nicer areas of Portland, that you don't have access to the same amenities and the same ability to cross the street safely, whether it's on Murray, whether it's on TV Highway, you name it. Our region needs to be better, and we need to strive to eradicate all deaths on our roadways when they can be prevented, especially pedestrian deaths. This measure is also a recognition of the very hard time that we're facing. And we know that everyone is struggling during the pandemic, and the economy is certainly reflective of that. You know, we also know that this is an incredible opportunity for us to jumpstart our local economy. You know, by passing this multi-billion-dollar measure, you know, we leverage at least $2 billion of federal funds to get people to work. And this taxing measure is a payroll tax that is going after only 9% of the wealthiest and most profitable corporations in the region, meaning that 91% of businesses are exempt from paying this payroll tax. The tax doesn't take effect until 2022, giving us time to continue to recover. And we're working with multiple business organizations across the region to create a plan that phases in this employer-based payroll tax. This was modeled after the TriMet payroll tax, but unlike the TriMet payroll tax, only the employer will pay the tax on this. There will be no line item on your W-2s or on your paycheck stub. We will be investing $4 billion into corridors, creating over 37,000 jobs, living wage jobs, at least at a minimum, very conservative estimates by third-party economists. And investing, like I said, addressing the systemic racism in our transportation system is something that is very important to me as a young Latino that grew up along TV highway and watched and has watched people risk their lives just to get to a bus stop or to get to the grocery store since the day I was born. We, in addition to the corridor investments, we have what we call program investments. And I'm sure I'm going a little long here, so I can be short. I'm sorry, I can't see this. I can't see others speak right now, because I have the presentation going on. But we have several programs that invest in community stability, a student fare pass for everyone under the age of 18, climate, a focus on climate, bus electrification, so that TriMet never has to buy a diesel bus and continue to increase diesel air particulates in our regional air. And we have a lot of supporters from across the region that know that this is the right measure at the right time, recognizing the hardships that we're going through and the ability for it to unlock movement and mobility in the future. Please join the campaign. Please vote yes on Measure 26-218. That's my ask to you. I am very available. You can get a hold of me however you like. Again, my name is Juan Carlos. I am honored to be your Metro Councilor, and thank you for entertaining my presentation.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I wasn't sure whether we thought we had someone to speak in opposition, but I wasn't sure, but now we do. So I appreciate your presentation, but stick around because after we hear from the opposition, we'll take some questions. Jill.
Thank you. I was hiding there in the quiet. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you for a few minutes. I'm
Sure.
Jill Island. I'm a member. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
I'm a member of the Stop the Metro Wage Tax campaign team, a longtime Washington County resident, a 40-year advocate on behalf of economic prosperity in the region. And the reason I joined the campaign team is not because necessarily the component parts of the package itself, but the funding mechanism that was identified at the last minute after the community conversation was held that will tax 70% of the workers in the metro region. So just a little bit of a background here. I have the utmost respect for Juan Carlos. I'm so sorry that we're here on opposite sides of an issue because I know we both deeply care about the region. But I would tell you that the conversation that took place for nearly 2 years to identify the initiatives and the investments to be made was a worthy discussion. And Juan Carlos is right that business was at the table for that discussion. However, the Metro Council then, when it came to the funding portion of that opportunity, limited the time and the discussion around the funding opportunity to 2 months. So we went from 2 years to 2 months on the most important part of the program for the business community, which was the funding mechanism. And then Metro and its council took 2 minutes to exempt itself from having to pay this 0.75% payroll tax that again will impact 75% of the workers in our region. And right now we've had about 118, almost 120,000 jobs that have been lost in Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington counties since the pandemic. It is the pandemic that has changed everything. I don't believe we would be having this conversation this evening, or I would be trying to convince you that this is the wrong tax at the wrong time, were it not for the pandemic and the unprecedented economic impact that pandemic has had on the region. A $5.2 billion new permanent tax is one of the largest regional taxes, one of the largest states in the history of Oregon that has ever been considered. And again, the funding mechanism was only determined late in the spring, early in the summer. And the business community believes that we were kept out of the conversation about the funding mechanism because we were opposed to having it only be a tax on workers' wages. The interesting thing is that about 515,000 employees of private businesses are going to be impacted, and 70,000 employees of nonprofit organizations in our region. That's hospitals, that's colleges, that's even churches in some instances. It's certain nonprofit organizations that have more than 25 employees. So while the Metro team would tell you that only 90 or 91% of the businesses are exempt from paying this tax, if 70% of the workers are covered by a payroll tax, that suggests the important role that the companies who will be making this new payroll tax, what they do to add to the economic prosperity of the region. This is not a tax on profits or the wealthy. It's a tax on working people's wages and benefits. And again, Metro exempted itself and all other local and state government agencies from paying the tax. That took 100,000 taxpayers who use our road system out of the formula to invest in these various corridors. And most of these corridors, if not all, are projects that were envisioned, managed, and allegedly supported by the Oregon Department of Transportation. And yet it's the Metro region taxpayers that are going to be asked to fix all of the ills in these corridors. The Stop the Metro Wage Tax group does not believe that some of the component parts of the program are certainly, I'm getting all garbled here. You can tell you're not getting me at my finest hour. I'm usually in bed by 9 o'clock. But at any rate, there are several important investments that the business community would support, the safety improvements along TVA Highway and 82nd Avenue. And in fact, the Portland Business Alliance and other business leaders went to Metro before the referral to the voters in July and asked them if they would delay consideration of the measure and pull out the equity investment portions of the measure. And we could talk about a funding mechanism for that the business community was willing to support. I think you all appreciate that the lion's share of the money goes to the Southwest Corridor Project, which is the light rail line from Southwest Portland to the high-end Bridgeport Mall. And I'm hard pressed to call that an equity investment when it's not going to advantage all of the people that Juan Carlos was talking about earlier this evening. Only 3% by Metro's own admission of the investment is going to do anything to address congestion relief, and 0.05% of the money is going to, or 0.05% of our emissions in the region are going to be impacted by this significant investment. Again, a $5.2 billion new permanent tax on wages of 70% of the workers in our region. When this measure was being considered for funding, even Metro Councilor Bob Stacy said this, and I'm going to look at my notes: the payroll tax is a shameful way of imposing the cost of this needed service on the working people in our region and letting the wealthy off the hook. Again, not a profits tax, not a tax on wealthy people, not a tax on wealthy corporations. It's a tax on workers' paychecks, 70% of them in our region. And Craig Dirksen in July of this year said, for me, the funding source we use is less important because in the end, there's only one source of money. It's coming out of taxpayers' pockets. So again, does the business community need a viable transportation system and structure to move people to work and to move freight to the markets? Absolutely, yes. Would we be pleased to sit back down with Metro in a post-COVID environment and create a plan that is more applicable to a post-COVID world? We would be delighted to do so. Again, I'm sorry that the resources are being spent on too expensive campaigns and you're hearing such diabolically opposed opinions about the benefits of the measure. But again, we believe this is the wrong tax at the wrong time, and there's nothing equitable about shrinking paychecks. Thank you.
Okay, we have some questions. I posed a question myself. Do self-employed people have to pay this tax?
Virginia, thank you. I can answer that. Self-employed folks do not have to pay this tax. Again, the tax is on employers in the region that have more than 25 employees.
Okay.
And yes, Virginia, self-employed people don't, but it's a tax on employees' wages and benefits, is evidenced by a Moss Adams study that came out a couple of weeks ago that it said that the way that this hasty measure was written, it could also capture the value of the benefits paid to employees, including their TriMet passes, their retirement benefits, their bonuses. It would be a total compensation tax on workers' wages.
Okay.
Not on employers, on workers' wages.
I mean,
Well,
Jill,
Carlos has a comment, yeah.
be here. I could be here all night dispelling the disinformation that Jill is sharing. I mean, I could go, bit by bit, but the council has been very clear, and the Moss Adams report, what they quoted there was our full legal authority, but we've been very clear about how narrow this mechanism is going to be. We're not going to be taxing people's benefits. And one thing that the opposition campaign says regularly is that this is a tax on employees' wages, and that's just false. It's not a tax on your wages. Employees will not be seeing a tax line item on your paycheck stubs, on your W-2. This is on employers.
Okay.
I disagree.
Well, just a minute, Jill. We have a couple of other. I can see that this is not going to get solved tonight. Jody Weiser asked, what funding mechanism would you support at this time, Jill?
Well, I can't represent the whole business community. I would tell you that when the discussions began several months back, there was an increase in the vehicle registration fee that was considered, but that was taken off the table when Metro did a poll and found out that that wasn't a popular measure. I would tell you that everyone loves a tax that someone else pays. And so I don't know that I have the answer for you as to what the funding mechanism ought to be, but I would tell you that the business community has been a vital partner in transportation investments for as long as I've been in the business. And we would very much like to be at that table to help design the right funding measure in a post-COVID environment.
And that takes us to the next question, which is, does this measure take into account the changing demands on our transportation system due to the pandemic?
I would say no. Because again, the transportation package came together pre-COVID. The funding mechanism was being determined during COVID, and the referral to the voters happened in July of this year. So do we fully understand changing commuting patterns? I would say no. Do we understand the full economic impact and how long it's going to take for our region to recover from the pandemic? No, we don't. I certainly have a lot of empathy for the 300,000 Oregonians that lost their jobs due to the pandemic. So I think, again, it's not as much about the component parts of the measure as it is about the funding measure that was decided at the last minute without business input on how this $5.2 billion new tax measure was going to be paid for.
Juan Carlos, there's another question at the bottom here, and I'll let you have your go at that. Do you see this? Doesn't the gas tax and existing TriMet taxes help pay for some projects under this measure? Why the need for additional funding?
Yeah, well, thank you, Carl, for the question. There are multiple ways that revenue enter our transportation system. Some of them are limited by the Highway Trust Fund at the state level and how those dollars are delegated to either the local government or the state. I think that local elected officials and government leaders, one thing that we can recognize is that we've had shortfalls in our transportation funding for a very long time. One of the most important aspects of this measure is that we are creating plans with ODOT around jurisdictional transfer for our orphan highway system. If we look at TB Highway, 82nd, McLaughlin, a lot of these roads, if not most of them that are identified in this measure, they were initially built as getting farm products to markets and farm products to ports, and did not account for the huge urban and suburban communities that now live alongside these roads. The truth is that we just don't have enough money to address the needs that are in the system. ODOT is responsible or has been responsible, and this measure is addressing decades of neglect that has just gotten out of hand. And we're stepping up. The community's asked us to step up, and to address the question that I think Julie asked as well. Does the measure take into account the changing demands of our transportation system? I would go insofar as to say that You know, as long as people live in this region, as long as people move in this region, they're going to need safe lighting. They're going to need safe crosswalks. And to address our climate crisis, we're going to need better access to transit. And this measure is going to build the first regional bus rapid transit system in the region that we've ever seen. And we're going to start building towards a future that we can really you know, begin to address our climate smart strategy. There is no one silver bullet. We have to do a lot of different things to act on climate change, but I know it's a priority for folks on this group. We've talked about it a lot, and it's a big priority for me. But to answer your question, Carl, we need additional funds because we need more funds to address the billions of dollars of deficit in our regional transportation plan for resilience and seismic resilience, our road system, our transit system, and these are capital dollars to build things.
Okay, well, you know what? We've actually reached the end of the evening, and I'm gonna say that we'll either post answers to the questions on the CPO1 Facebook page or on the county website CPO1 page. I don't know which, but I will send out a message to our CPO1 mailing list and let you know. We've captured all the questions that didn't get answered. We'll be glad to forward them to the correct candidates and participants. And indeed, thank you everybody, the panelists, the attendees for asking good questions, and everyone for giving up a little piece of their Tuesday evening so that we can all be educated voters. And if you haven't registered yet, you can still go online and do that. Please vote. The ballots are going out soon. Make sure that you know where your ballot box is. And personally, I would recommend that everybody find out where their official ballot box is rather than trying to depend on the Postal Service, because given what's been happening lately, it's not as reliable as it used to be. We love our postal workers and we love our Postal Service, but those county ballot boxes are the places where I think we can trust putting our ballots into. So thank you all. And with that, I'll say good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.
Good night.
Thank you all. Good night.